He found a wounded Bigfoot mother, and mercy cost him everything. The night didn't break, it folded. Snow moved sideways, a white curtain breathing against the cabin walls. The fire had died to a spine of ember. Then came the sound, not a knock, not a growl, but 3 short taps. One long, the same pattern Elias had heard once before, years back, the night the forest gave him a choice between mercy and fear. He stood still, listening. No wind could knock like that. He lifted the latch, slow. Cold poured in, thick with the smell of pine sap and iron, at the edge of his lantern light. She stood the Bigfoot mother fur clotted dark at the shoulder, breath rasping steam through the snow. Blood glistened like black glass. She wasn't roaring. She was waiting. Behind her, a smaller shape whimpered. A cub no older than a season. Half of its face burned with wire and frostbite, the other half pure. Terrified. Elias whispered, "You again?" He'd seen her before, across a fire line, the night she carried 2 cubs into the storm and never came back. Now she was here, 1 cub left, 1 wound too deep, and something else out there. Watching from the tree line. The mother raised her arm, not to strike but to show. A trap still clung to her wrist, steel teeth locked through fur and flesh. She couldn't cross the threshold, but she could ask. Elias set his lantern on the floor. "All right," he breathed. "All right." He opened the lower latch. The cub staggered in, limping, eyes wide, breath shivering in small clouds. The mother stayed outside, pressing her bloody palm against the doorframe, 1 heartbeat too, then stepped backward into the storm. The latch closed. The cabin swallowed the wind. And mercy, the kind that never stays cheap, had crossed the line again. Before we go further, Elias murmured to the empty room, "Comment the name of your city, because after tonight, the word mercy might never sound the same." Part 1. The Price of Warmth. The cub didn't understand doors. It stood there shaking, eyes flicking between fire and shadow, torn between instinct and exhaustion. Elias knelt slow, letting his breath find a calm it didn't own. "You're safe," he whispered, though both of them knew safety was just a word that hadn't been tested yet. He poured water from the kettle, let the steam drift toward its nose. The cub blinked, sniffed, then stumbled forward. Under the soot and fur, the wound looked raw. Metal had cut through muscle and frozen there. Elias fetched snowmelt, salt, the old shirt he'd meant to burn. Outside, the wind dragged branches across the roof. Every scrape sounded like footsteps pacing the edge of patience. He pressed the cloth against the wound. The cub flinched, then stilled. "Pain is honest," that's what his father used to say. "You can't lie through it." He wrapped the leg tight, fingers trembling not from cold but from the weight of being watched. Because he was being watched. Through the frost-glazed window, a shadow loomed tall, still, listening. The mother. She hadn't moved. Only the snow shifted around her feet, whispering her shape into the dark. Elias moved to the stove, cracked 2 eggs, tore bread into the pan. The smell filled the cabin, softening the silence. The cub tilted its head, ears twitching at the unfamiliar language of warmth. He smiled. See, heat doesn't have to hurt. Something thumped outside, slow, deliberate. 3 short, 1 long. The same rhythm from the door. He answered. tapping the table once with his knuckle. "Still here," he whispered. The shadow outside leaned closer, breath fogging the glass. For a moment he thought he saw her eyes amber, patient, almost forgiving. Then she stepped back, swallowed by the storm. The kettle whistled low. Elias poured milk into a cup, set it near the cub. It sniffed, dipped its tongue, startled by sweetness. He laughed quietly, a sound that almost didn't belong to the wilderness anymore. Outside, a wolf howled, then another, and another. Not hunting yet, just announcing that the forest had changed its rules. Elias stoked the fire, watched the cub's small body curl by the stove. He leaned his head back, eyes on the ceiling, and whispered into the smoke. Mercy's a strange warmth. Once it starts burning, it doesn't stop where you meant it to. Part 2. The Hunters in the Snow. By midnight, the wind had changed its tone. It stopped howling and began to listen. Every creak of timber came back twice, like an echo carrying questions it didn't want answered. Elias rose, poured what was left of the milk into a bowl, then heard it the far-off bark of dogs, thin and hungry, breaking the silence in pieces. He moved to the window. Lanterns, small dots of orange threading through the pines, steady, methodical, human. He whispered, "No, not tonight." The cub twitched at his voice. The mother's shadow had vanished from the tree line, or maybe she'd melted into it. He packed the stove down to embers, smothered the light. The world went gray-blue, all breath and heartbeat. Outside, the dogs drew closer, their rhythm matching the wind's. Men followed voices carrying names he recognized. Lyle, Harker, Boone, names that belonged to men who hunted out of pride, not hunger. Elias opened the door a crack. The air bit his lungs. He could smell kerosene, sweat, and the iron promise of rifles. 3 shapes trudged through snowdrift toward his porch. The dogs strained at their chains, whining at the scent that clung to his cabin walls, wild, sweet, and wrong. Lyle's voice cracked the dark. "Jonas's old place. Ain't it thought he died out here?" Boone spat. "If he didn't, he's about to." Elias stepped onto the porch, coat open, hands empty. Evening. They froze, surprised at the calm. Boone sneered. "Heard something up this way. Screaming. Tracks big as a damn wagon." Elias shrugged. Wind plays tricks in weather like this. Lyle lifted his lantern higher. The light slid across the snow, found the faint prints near the door. Too small for a man, too soft for a boot. He smiled. "Wind make these too." Elias didn't answer. Inside, the cub whimpered, once too quiet to travel far, but not quiet enough. The dogs caught it, hackles raised, growls rolled low and mean. Lyle grinned wider. There it is. Elias stepped forward, blocking the view through the half-open door. "You hear that?" he said. "That's the sound of mercy. Gentlemen, the one thing you don't get to shoot." Boone's hand went to his rifle. "Step aside." He didn't. Snow drifted between them, flakes turning orange in lantern light. Behind him, the cub cried again, and somewhere beyond the ridge, the forest answered a sound deep and wet, like thunder trapped inside lungs. Lyle froze. "What the hell was that?" Elias said softly. The wind fell silent. The dogs whimpered. And every man on that porch realized mercy had an echo and it was coming their way. Part 3. The warning in the wind. The wind stopped pretending to be wind. It shifted, heavy, slow like lungs filling under the snow. The hunters felt it first. Lyle's lantern flickered, flame bending sideways as if bowing to something taller in the dark. Boone turned, rifle trembling. "What is that?" Elias whispered. "You already know." From the trees came the sound low, deliberate, a growl that didn't hunt for prey, but for warning. Every trunk vibrated. Snow loosened from branches and fell in sheets, whispering down like the forest was shedding its skin. Then, between the pines, she stepped out. The mother. Not sprinting, not roaring walking. Each stride measured, calm, impossible. Her shoulder was still wrapped in flannel and blood. Fur glistened like bark under frost. One arm hung low, the other raised slightly, open, showing emptiness. A gesture of peace or of restraint. The dogs whimpered, tails curling tight. Boone whispered, "Jesus," and lowered his rifle an inch. Lyle didn't. "Shoot," he hissed. Before Elias moved first. He stepped between them, palms open, body thin to the cold. "She's not here for you," he said. "She's here for what you took." Lyle sneered. "That thing's a monster." Elias shook his head. "Monsters don't knock 3 short. 1 long." The wind carried his words out and brought something back, a deep tone, almost a hum, vibrating in their chests. The mother made no sound, but her breath rolled like thunder inside their bones. Her gaze landed on the open door behind Elias where the cub hid in the glow of the dying fire. Boone's voice cracked. "Let her take it. We don't want this." But Lyle's pride had already found its target. He raised the rifle. Elias caught the motion too late to stop it, just enough to ruin the aim. The shot tore through the cold, splitting air and echo. For half a heartbeat, there was no sound. Then the mother moved faster than belief, a blur of fur and snow. She didn't attack. She passed. Between them, straight toward the door. Elias shouted, "No," and slammed it shut just as her palm struck the wood. The cabin shook but held. Inside, the cub screamed. Outside, a sound tore through the night, not pain, not fury, but something older. A warning. A promise. Elias pressed his back to the door, heart hammering. Through the cracks came heat, her breath melting frost, steaming against his skin. She could break through. She didn't. She waited. And when the echo faded, she tapped the wood, 3 short, 1 long, then silence. Elias whispered into the still air, "That wasn't a threat. That was mercy reminding me what it costs." Part 4. The Last Choice, Ban Morong, Kichtin Hon. The night broke open with the sound of glass shattering. Then the smell hit kerosene. They'd lit the snow. Fire crawled across the drift like veins of orange through milk. Elias burst through the door, coat half on, shouting into the wind, "Stop! You'll burn the ridge." But the men were past reason. Fear made them holy in the wrong direction. Lyle stood closest, eyes wild with the reflection of his own flame. "You let her come here," Elias shouted back. She never came in. The fire cracked behind him, and in that brief light he saw the cub pressed against the wall, trembling. Boone's face softened. Put it out. Lyle. You'll kill a roar cut him off. Not thunder, not animal. Something older. The kind of sound that bends bone before you understand why. The trees bent with it. Flame flattened, hissed, died. Smoke turned to frost in midair, and out of the collapsing dark, the mother appeared. Fur matted, wound open, breath streaming in white ribbons. She didn't charge. She walked through dying fire and drifting ash, eyes fixed on Elias. Her shadow swallowed the men behind him. Lyle raised his rifle, but the shot never came. The gun jammed, bolt frozen. He cursed, struck the stock, terrified. Boone backed away. She's bleeding to death, he whispered. She came for the cub, Elias said, and maybe to see if mercy works both ways. He dropped to one knee, pulled his coat open, showing his hands empty. Take him, he whispered. The cub cried once torn between two worlds. Then the crack a gun fired from somewhere up the slope. A stray hunter, blind to what was happening. The bullet sang through the dark and found Elias's shoulder. He fell, snow swallowing the impact, pain blooming cold and clean. The mother froze, not from fear, but from restraint. She reached down, palm broad as a shovel, pressed it gently against his wound. Her blood mixed with his, steam rising between them. The world narrowed to heartbeat and breath. Then, with a sound like a sigh, she lifted the cub, turned toward the trees, and was gone. Boone rushed forward, grabbing Elias's collar. Stay awake, damn it. You did this for a monster. Elias smiled weakly, eyes dimming. For mercy, he said. Monsters don't knock first. The fire had died, but its glow still pulsed beneath the snow-red veins breathing in the dark, refusing to go out. Boone looked toward the woods, saw nothing but silence. Lyle dropped to his knees, face pale as ash. The storm began to calm, the sky bruising into dawn. Elias lay back, blood freezing on his sleeve, and whispered to no one, "If you're still listening, subscribe now, because the next sound you hear might not be mercy, it might be what comes after." Part 5. The Mercy That Stayed. He woke to quiet that didn't belong to the world he'd left. No wind, no dogs, just the faint hiss of snow melting on ember. The cabin was half ash, half miracle. The walls still stood, blackened but breathing. Smoke hung low, curling around him like a question he didn't know how to answer. His shoulder burned not sharp, but deep. The way an old wound remembers fire. He tried to sit. The movement tore at him. But then he saw it a shadow beside the stove. Not human. Broad. Still. The mother had been there. Her prints circled him in the snow, pressed deep, wide as his chest, where the roof had fallen. Something massive had blocked the collapse. The beam that should have crushed him had landed across a frozen handprint, larger than life, half buried under frost. His blood had soaked into that mark, and the snow above it had frozen back, smooth, unbroken, as if the mountain itself wanted to keep the secret. He whispered, voice raw, "You saved me." No echo, only the stove ticking, the sound of metal remembering heat. He dragged himself to the door. The air outside was thin, clean, touched with cedar and smoke. The sky was the pale gold of forgiveness. And there, nailed to the porch, hung a new ring of cedar, bound with a strip torn from his own coat. A message. 3 short. 1 long. He smiled through blood and breath. The cubs were gone, the forest silent. But peace was louder than any roar. He stepped out, boots sinking into snow that no longer felt hostile. Every print he left filled instantly, like the land didn't want to hold anything violent anymore. He turned back once, looked at the cabin, its smoke climbing slow and honest. The world had taken something from him and left something better in return. He whispered to the trees, "If mercy leaves a mark, I hope it's this." The wind stirred soft, deliberate, and far away. The mountains answered with a sound that might have been thunder, or a heart too big to die quietly. In the end, she saved 2 lives, and I learned mercy isn't something you give. It's something that stays. If you felt that, comment the name of your city, like this story, and rate it from 0 to 10. Subscribe, because the next sound in the snow won't be mercy coming back. It'll be what remembers it. Next, he followed the baby's cries into the ice cave. But something was crying back.